Hello and welcome to the Castle of Horror, the show dedicated to horror movies and awesomeness. This week we continue our summer film retrospective, working our way through the Creature from the Black Lagoon series, finishing that series this week with the 1956 film The Creature Walks Among Us. Bear in mind, if you haven't seen today's movie, we're going to be talking about it from the perspective of horror fans who have seen it. So warning, spoilers ahead. From Denver, Colorado, I'm your host, Jason Henderson, author of the upcoming Young Captain Nemo series from Fievel and Friends Macmillan Books. With me from Austin is Tony Salvaggio, tech director at Rooster Teeth Studios, lead singer of the band Deserts of Mars, and lead guitarist of the band Rise from Fire. Say hello, Tony.
Howdy.
Also in Austin is Mr. Drew Edwards, editor-in-chief of HorrorMovies.net, writer for Rockabilly Online, and creator and writer of the long-running comic Halloween Man. Say hello, Drew.
That's Drew, Mr. Edwards, if you're nasty.
Mr. Edwards. There are some nasty people in this movie. I'm really looking forward to discussing this film. And finally, also in Denver, as always, color commentary from attorney Julia Guzman of Guzman Immigration of Denver. Say hello.
Hello.
Hello. Are you ready for this movie?
I am. I can't wait to talk about the movie.
I'm really looking forward to this. Okay. All right. The Creature Walks Among Us, released in 1956, is the third and final installment of the Creature from the Black Lagoon film series from Universal Pictures. It followed Revenge of the Creature. Last movie, the creature was running amok at an ocean park in Florida. This time he is loose in the Everglades. Jack Arnold is no longer the director. This time the director is John Sherwood, and it stars Jeff Morrow, Rex Reason, and Leigh Snowden. And it has music, really pretty good music, by Henry Mancini, who is slumming because at this point he's under a contract and he has to do a bunch of movies.
Well,
And so
Harry
Henry
Mancini did music for the other two Creature movies.
Oh yes, yes indeed. Yeah, no, he has brought a real character to these films because every time the creature appears, he appears with a Henry Mancini flourish. This whole bah,
Well,
bah, bah,
that's
and it's
that's
yeah.
actually I can't remember the name of the composer, but that's actually God. I sound like such a nerd right now. That is actually a different composer. All three of these movies had composite scores. Henry Mancini was one of about 4 or 5
What?
different composers, and Henry Mancini basically did the flowy, more romantic scenes. But the creature theme, the one that everybody thinks of, that's
Yeah.
not actually Henry Mancini.
Are
That
you
is a common
serious?
misconception. I am
That's
serious
really
as a heart attack, my friend. That's a common misconception, though. It's okay. You're in very
Well,
good company.
I can understand why the misconception. I mean, it says music by Henry Mancini, so I would think so. But okay, all right. So that flourish, the best part of the score, is not even by Henry Mancini. Okay, fine. There we go. But we do get a lot of really groovy soap opera sax that's going on whenever the various couplings are on screen, and so I presume that is Henry Mancini doing his full melodrama act with this stuff. So awesome. Let's get our opening thoughts about this movie, The Creature Walks Among Us. Let me tell you something. You told me this movie's a bummer, and I was kind of ready for this movie, and this movie is nothing at all what I expected. It is utterly different film. I'm not saying it's not a bummer. I'm just saying there's no part of any of this that I predicted. So let's start. Let's go Drew, Joya, Tony, and then if I have anything else to say, I'll say something. So Drew, opening thoughts. The Creature Walks Among Us.
This I regularly watch the other two. I find them more enjoyable than this one, but because basically what befalls the creature in this movie, he gets burnt, he gets his gills removed. He's basically turned into this. He goes from being agile and powerful to this clumsy, plodding thing, and longing to be what he once was. And I always found that very sad. They finally domesticated him, and but this time around, honestly, maybe it's because I watched them all back to back. This time around, I think I actually enjoyed this movie more. I mean, it's still kind of more low rent feeling than the other two, but there's a lot of interesting, psychosexual and psychology going on here, and because we have the Gill Man, who they do finally manage to tame, juxtaposition to this story of this this put down, this woman who's very dynamic, but all these men are trying to tame her simultaneously.
Sure.
And watching that, and there's actually like a point where they do a dissolve from the creature to her, and for like a split second, it almost looks like she has the creature's head. When Jamie and I were watching this, we paused it right on that, and we both looked at each other with this realization. And I think this movie, because of that, because I finally realized that we're watching the two of them, basically being forced to conform side by side. I found that fascinating this time. So in a way, this is almost the most adult of the creature movies. Again, I still feel like it's more low rent. It does feel smaller than the others.
Mm-hmm.
But I out of all the times I've watched this movie, I definitely enjoyed this the most, this viewing.
Fabulous. Okay, that's given us a lot to think about. Julia, yes, is this the creature as metaphor for struggling marriage?
No, I don't quite see it that. Let me say that I don't think this movie is deep enough to be a metaphor for anything. It's so two-dimensional. I was so disappointed after last time when I was like, oh, they have a great female character and there's some really interesting stuff in this film. This movie, to me, was like somebody told a 9-year-old, okay, here are the kinds of characters that you want to include in your story, and then the 9-year-old made them. And actually, even that's insulting to 9-year-olds, because Katerina, when she was 9, could have done a much better job. But no, I just didn't like this film. I thought all the characters were two-dimensional. I thought all the plot points were just so on the nose. I was so disappointed with this film. I mean, it's just from the beginning. It's like, here are all of your, here's your, your hero character, and here's your free-spirited, depressed, rich housewife character, and here's the jerk, and here's the other jerk. It's just like, I don't know. I didn't care for this movie.
Wow. Okay. Right out of the box. Two very disparate opinions. Tony, what are you thinking?
If you didn't know, humans are awful. All of them, part and part. Even after last week's Blackfish experience, we're still terrible and perhaps more terrible. Also, Rain pointed out that the husband's really beady eyes probably meant that he was the creature who walks among us, because he's totally a creep. And I tend to agree with her that he's probably the actual creature that's walking among us, because he's a creepy weirdo. I don't know. I am neither here nor there. I'm somewhere in between you guys. It didn't really leave any lasting impression other than, I'm really sad for the creature at the end, but I hate that suit now. I think it's just like a Tor Johnson as the creature, which in a lot of cases would sound okay, but I kind of would rather just see Tor Johnson doing his thing than this lumbery guy in a prison jumpsuit. I don't know. It just tragic stuff happens. It's got melodrama. But I don't know. I'm just kind of ambivalent. It didn't strike me. I never really care to see it again. It doesn't really do anything for me. And the creature design that I like is only in it for, they get rid of that after a while. So,
So, just so you know, this guy playing the creature on land is Don McGowan, and he was 6 feet 7 inches tall. And good-looking guy. I mean, he's completely not seen here, but perfectly Hollywood-looking leading man type. He's just hidden under a heck of a lot here. Okay, my feeling actually is I'm somewhere in between Joya and Drew, and the reason why is I really like all this melodrama. And by melodrama, basically you have the unhappy marriage and the jealous husband and then the sleazy dude, all that stuff, in amongst the fact that they're on this mission to go try to capture this creature. I would feel a lot worse about what happens to the creature, but my watching of it, and we'll get to it later, is that actually when I first knew of this story years ago, I was much more depressed about it. This time I read it and I realize that this could be one episode in many, many creature stories, and I'm not at all certain that what happens here is permanent at all. The creature goes through so many changes, and completely possible that he'll wander back to the water and we'll see another creature. So since I'm so capable of convincing myself that there can be a happy ending, then I'm not as depressed. So but I, like Drew, I really liked a lot of the dialogue where the characters would get together and talk about catching creatures, and they're actually talking about human frailty and human relationships and things like that. That stuff worked for me pretty well. So
I
let's get started. Oh, go ahead. Yeah.
I am not like I do think like let me while I do enjoy this movie, like I have to state this is the weakest of the three. Like it is they spent the least amount of money on it. There's actually any time you see the classic creature design when he's swimming underwater, they use stock footage from the original movie that was like unused footage. Like there's a lot of cheapness here. And in fact, even though I've never actually read that anywhere, I've always wondered if half the reason why they did get rid of the creature's gills is so there would be less time spent underwater and therefore less time with costly underwater effects. So, like, I do think that this is a much
a lot of water work in this movie.
Still a decent amount.
I agree with you. It's a cheaper film. Go ahead.
I understand. I guess my point is I understand where Julia is coming from, and I still think I'm with. There's still a lot about this movie that's interesting to me.
Yeah. Yeah, it used to be the rule with Hollywood, especially at Universal, if you had a series that went on multiple movies, every successive movie, you'd spend less money on it, and you'd also assume that the audience would get slightly smaller, and so you'd be chasing the last dollars and cutting the amount that you would spend on each one until finally you killed the series. And that was definitely what happened with 20th Century Fox and the Planet of the Apes, for instance. They started out with a pretty expensive film, and when you get to the last one, it's all being filmed outdoors, in the desert, and it's a bunch of people wearing masks, and you're not spending very much. This is like that. You're absolutely right. The reason there's so much relationship work in this movie is because that's the cheapest thing they can possibly do, is just spend a lot of time on what amounts to a soap opera.
Which is why I'm disappointed because, if they're going to spend time in relationships, then make them be, like, good relationships. Instead of just having it be so shallow.
Well, let's talk about the relationship. Okay.
Melodramatic.
So, all right. So the relationship that we start out with, we have a bunch of, and Joy, we'll get to the marriage soon. But before that, we start out meeting all of the people together on a new expedition.
Oh my God, that scene cracked me up so much because
what's the deal?
It was so I was seeing an MST in my head just watching it because it was like Dr. Morgan, Dr. Borg, Dr. Barton, Dr. Morgan, Dr. Borg, Grant, Mrs. Barton, Mr. Dr. Barton, Dr. Morgan, Dr. Johnson, Mrs. Barton. I was like, yes, doctor. Oh no, doctor. But I am a doctor,
they love talking about how they're doctors. Yeah, they love to talk about how much they're doctors and how they're different kind of doctors. There's a point where the hunky Dr. Morgan has laid out the instruments, and Dr. Barton goes, "Gosh, Dr. Morgan, you did a good job doing that, considering you're not a medical doctor."
Well, I am a geneticist, but I'm also a doctor, as if you have to be a doctor to be able to have the instrument. And then he's like, I just like to see that, somebody who's so good at being perfect about things or whatever. And I was like, okay, so we've already set out that this guy is a jerk, totally condescending jerk, Dr. Barton is. And Dr. Morgan we know he's hot and we know he's smart, so he's probably the hero. Grant might have been the hero, but then he immediately also was a total jerk. When he's like the guide, because he's like, your husband must be, he says to the blonde, your husband must be awfully rich to be able to afford everything he owns, meaning her. And so I was like, okay, so he's a jerk. So that leaves us with Morgan. He's got to be the hero because the other two leads are complete assholes.
Well, there's like, oh wow, you do a lot of things like a nurse would. Like a nurse does that really well.
they push Jed Grant. So Jed Grant is their guide, and they push him around. It's really weird. Like later, when it'll be time to make some pants for the monster, they have him do it. I don't know why, other than that he's the one who's
Because
not a doctor.
But not
because he's
they,
bargain
not
basement.
they. Dr. Barton,
It's
who's
because
the
he's
jerk.
bargain basement. It's because he's bargain basement Marlon Brando.
Yes, right,
Yeah.
right.
And he's
Play
too good
that.
for gadgets.
When it's time to
God
make some-
forbid he should actually look at a gadget to tell him how deep he should be.
When it's time to make some pants from the monster, you actually. This is a sentence that we say. When it's time to make some pants for the monster.
Yes.
Please.
I'm actually really surprised they didn't make the girl do it because it's this
Oh,
movie. Like
yeah.
I said, this movie takes like 5 steps backwards from the feminism of the
I
previous
don't
movie.
actually think that. I don't actually think that's fair to her.
Oh.
I don't think
Okay.
you're entirely being fair to her. They set her up as somebody that's gone around and done some stuff. Like she's been a big game hunter and all these things.
Yeah,
But
she
she's
shoots
married.
at shark.
She's married.
She's-
She's married to this guy who's like oppressing her, basically.
No.
No.
No, because
Wait,
that never
so-
happens in real life. Because that never happens in real
She
life.
got married. She was a hot 17-year-old who married a rich guy, and then she got bored with him because she realized that marrying a rich guy and traveling around the world and doing adventurous things wasn't enough to fulfill her now 20-something need for whatever. And so now she feels sorry for herself because she's married to somebody that doesn't fulfill her. So she needs the hot Dr. Morgan because her husband is not hot.
But she
That's all
never
she
hits
is.
on Dr.
She's like
Morgan.
so shallow.
Her husband's a creep. It's not that he's not
He is a
hot.
creep, but that's because
He's a
she doesn't
creep.
love him at all. I mean, that's not why, but part
he's
of
a
the
creep.
reason. That
I feel like you're being unfair. I don't think that she seems like she's a bad sort. Like maybe she married him for money. I don't know. We don't get into her circumstances. Like that's being thrown around a lot, but it's mostly being thrown around a lot by the men, you know.
Yeah,
so
but it's also
like,
obvious. She's gorgeous. She's young. He's rich. He's obnoxious.
I mean,
why
think
else
you're
would she marry him?
I
She
think
doesn't have
you're
any other
stereotyping.
redeeming
I think
qualities.
you're stereotyping.
Wait.
Yeah,
Can I?
the movie is
Let's actually look at
stereotyping. The movie is stereotyping her.
let's look at the evidence in front of us, just so that she is a little complicated because they hear shooting
But she's
while they're
two-dimensionally
conferring about the manly, while they're conferring about how awesomely doctorish they are. They hear shooting and they go out and she's shooting at shark. And
okay.
Kills two of them.
Let's.
She kills
Yes.
two of them. She's a good shot.
So you go on an expedition, a marine expedition. Expedition,
Yes.
and you hear shooting, and she's like, "Hey, yeah, this is what I do, like shoot sharks. Like that's marine.
Yeah.
Like, no, we study things. I much prefer shooting them. Like, come on, people. I guess
Yes.
it's of a time, but still, come on. Yeah, we like to
she
catch
is-
things. Nope. I can't believe you won't let me shoot sharks. This is what
Yeah.
kind of expedition
She
am I
does a
on?
lot of this. She does a lot of this pouting around when stuff like that. Instead of the doctor, because her husband is an asshole, he doesn't go, "Oh well, no, we strictly don't kill things when we're on our expeditions." Instead, he says, "Man talk. You need to just stand over there." So she pouts around a lot and does kind of make herself look like she really needs rescuing. But interestingly enough, the moment Jed Grant starts hitting on her, she's like, no, not interested, which
She's
is
not the one
fine
she
because
wants. She
he's a
wants
jerk.
Morgan. She sets her sights
But
on
she
Morgan
never
anyway.
hits on Morgan. To her credit, she never
The whole thing
says,
with Morgan is played so chaste, right down to
Yes.
like the last scene, even when her
Yes.
husband is dead. And she's a free woman. The whole thing is played so chastely. I
Yeah.
think you're I don't know.
I didn't
think
say
you're
she was
being
a hoe. I
unfair.
just said she was whiny and pitiful
Oh,
with
okay.
her.
Look, if I was married to that guy, I'd be fucking whiny too. He's a dick.
Well, why did she marry him to
Yeah.
begin with? She shouldn't have married him.
well, because when you're 17, who knows? But anyway,
it was the
we just
1950s.
described.
It's a different time, like
Okay.
women didn't women did not have the options that they had now. We don't know. Maybe
All right.
she came from nothing.
Can
I'm
I just
giving this character more of a backstory than she has.
all right, I just want to mention all of this stuff is going on. So while the in theory we're here to be hunting for the creature, but actually there's a lot of marriage drama going on with one woman who is maybe fairly innocent but too hot for her own good and yada yada yada. It's all this smoldering Hollywood stuff. And I gotta say, the one movie this reminded me of more than any other that we have done, and it was one of my favorites of the whole last year, is Zombies of Moratau. This really, I'm getting a
But
real
even has one
Zombies
of
of
the same
Moratau.
actor.
Wait, it does? Who's the same actor from Zombies of
Bargain
Moratau?
Basement Marlon Brando is also in Zombies of Meritau.
No,
Yes,
no. Yes.
yes. I am like 95% certain of that. If I'm wrong, like somebody jump on IMDb. But I remember while I was watching this thinking, oh my God, it's the same guy who's in Zombies of Meritau. I bet you Jason is having a
Wow.
conniption fit right
That's
now.
really fab. Yeah, I mean, I loved that movie so much just because of all this slow saxophone, melodrama stuff. And yes, by the way, Greg Palmer plays Jed Grant, the I don't know what you call him, the roustabout, the worker, the guide
I
on the
prefer
boat.
Bargain Basement Marlon Brando.
Right. And in Zombies of Moratau, I don't even remember what part he plays, but the character is called Greg Palm. No, the character is called Jeff Clark, and I guess he's the hero in that one. I really don't remember because if you recall, that one had Mrs. Harrison, and she also was unhappy with her wealthy husband and was kind of drinking too much and sort of blousing around the place and distracting all the men and except for she wound up getting bitten by a zombie. But it's both of these, they're teaching us in a way as a writer how to make a movie. If you have to make a monster movie and you don't have a lot of money, one thing you can do is just make it like 90% relationship stuff and then like 10% monster movie. Um, we do have a very big diving thing. See, they decide, okay, we're going in the Everglades. We're going to find the creature. Jed Grant is going to like show us more or less where we need to go. And the guy who has the boat, boy, do I miss I. Lucas. The guy who has the boat, he's an American and he has a sonar device, and they're gonna go dive around. And this second section of the movie, it's not a very long movie, but the second section is the kind of thing that you saw in Alien by Ridley Scott, where a lot of the suspense is from they're moving around and showing up on the sonar screen, and other creatures, other sea creatures, are visible on the sonar screen. And the question is, when is the other creature gonna be the creature from the Black Lagoon? I thought that was really cool. I mean, I hadn't, it's funny to think that this is a Hollywood trope that I hadn't seen a lot of, really.
Yeah, I like the where they're tracking it, like, hey, where is he at? Even if it is some kind of stock footage stuff behind the scenes.
I thought it was silly
So,
that they all go hunting for him in the little boat, and they leave the girl by herself on the ship. I thought they missed an opportunity actually with that he could have double crossed them, made them think that they were hunting him, and then he actually doubles back and goes and grabs her off the ship.
well,
His
we're
relationship with her is not like his relationship with the women in the other movies. Like he doesn't.
Well, but he's very protective of her, so he clearly likes her.
Well, but it doesn't. It because it is more protective. I mean, maybe we just didn't get to see that because he's just this, Mr. Kidnapper. But it's way less like King Kong Fay Ray than it was in the other movies. Like he is more kind of like her protector. I mean that's a great way to put it, because it's at one point where Grant gets a little almost rapey, and he's like he wasn't having that. He lays him out.
that is interesting when that. But before, go ahead, Tony.
I just like that he's like, man, your husband's the real creature. That's a crazy thing like you in the bar. I wish that creature was more in abundance.
Oh yes, yeah. But in this scene early on, okay, I'm trying to remember why they wind up doing the oh yeah, well, they do some diving. They're going to go down, right, and this is where in the boat they're being watched, but meanwhile all the divers go down physically to go look for the creature, and Marcia comes with them. And again, she is only on this expedition out of boredom. There
And
is
she
no
totally
skill.
screws things up because she
Yeah,
goes too
well,
deep.
sure, because she gets raptures of the deep, which is a thing that they tell us about in this movie
Right.
that
Well,
I'm sure
because
exists,
she and
but
Grant are too good for the gadgets. But she goes too deep, and then suddenly she starts taking her flippers off. At first, I thought she was just messing around. I was like, what the hell is she doing? And then I realized that, oh no, she's got the raptures of the deep when she goes unconscious.
Before that, she does a whole water dance.
That's what I'm saying. I think the water dance thing was part of the raptures of the. I think she starts to lose oxygen to her brain because she takes the flippers off, and discards them, which obviously is even more irresponsible than I think she would be, just to throw perfectly good flippers away.
she's high.
When she starts, she looks like she's fallen asleep, and she shakes it off, and then she starts raptures of the deep, whatever, space madness.
Yeah, it is. It's now this is a real thing. It's called narcosis, and it's you go down too deep and weird chemical stuff happens and you get high, and that's for real. And
anybody else.
No, I know it doesn't make sense here exactly, but it is a real thing anyway. She gets the raptors of the deep, and so they have to rescue her, and they don't have the opportunity to capture the creature at that point. So
but they're tracking
they
him with this weird like sonar thing or whatever. It's helping them to track him from the
but
ship.
they have to give up at that point. So then they go back out looking for him once again. This time in a little boat, a little dinghy. And I like that they don't give us the same scene twice. So now this time they go on a little boat. They have a they, this now it reminded me a lot of Jaws too. They have a lamp up front, and the creature is actually pretty scary because again they're watching the sonar, and and the first he gets up and he sees the lamp on the front of the boat and he goes and he hits it.
Well, that was Jason sent around this thing that I don't know if you posted it on the
No, but I'll
Facebook
mention
page
it during the endorsements for sure.
Yeah, but it's just like but it's a little bit. I mean, I don't know if you want to post it because of the language, but the whole thing is, and I guess we use language on the show, but it's like the whole thing is the creature saying "fuck this thing" and "fuck that thing." So he's like just hitting the lamp, hitting a person, hitting a.
He's always just pawing at stuff like a cat. He just sort of like
like that. Where the cat's like, "Fuck this, fuck that." Like, so it's just the creature's take on that, which is enjoyable.
I didn't care for the boat scene at all, one bit. I didn't like it at all because, like I said, for one thing, I thought that it was silly that they would all go. Like, nobody would stay behind to help the girl watch the ship or whatever. And then in case he did kind of double back. And then the other thing is that, it's poorly thought out. I mean, they had a really bad plan of, okay, hopefully we won't kill him, but we'll just like spear him, but try not to spear him in any vital organs. What does he do? The guy when the creature jumps up on the little boat, because like you said about Jaws, they're going to need a bigger boat for this creature. He spears him right through the heart, as far as I can tell. And then the next shot, it's like a continuity thing. Now the spear is sticking out of the left side of the right side of his body. So I think that was just stupid. And then he's getting all these spears in him, and then the creature himself pours gasoline all over himself, which I was like, what? I just thought that scene was so dumb.
Well, he's not
so
trying to pour gasoline on himself. He's trying to get something to throw at them.
Sure, he picks it up and he goes,
and then then they throw fire at him, and he sets on fire. And in that scene, that shot looks like he set the whole boat on fire and all the people on it. But then the next shot, he's the only thing that's set on fire. I don't know. I just thought that was really poorly done.
By the way, before this, when they're talking, now tell me, this is part of why all this makes sense that they would have such a poor plan. So when they're talking about the science of the creature and they're going to catch it, because it's the Atom Age, Doctor goes, yeah, I'm really interested in this creature. I want to explore, I need you to help me explore genetics. I don't think it's matched its full potential. Wait till we don't change people back to where they can live in the ocean, because people are going to mess everything up. So we need this creature. We're going to modify it so that this creature can be our envoy into space.
Yes.
Not,
Yeah,
not,
that was super nuts. That's another reason why Dr. Barton's a bad guy, because he's just
But
like
let's
evil
not-
and
let's-
mad
they do.
scientist.
That is sort of a through line from the first movie. They do briefly talk
Yeah, but
about
come on,
how.
dude. Come on, Drew.
Yeah.
I know you like this movie, but that dude's plan is total crap.
Oh no, it's insane! It's insane.
Like,
But
Yeah.
I
we
mean,
have all this
it's a
ocean.
monster. It's a monster movie. He's a mad scientist. I'm just saying, like,
Yes.
it is something that has been previously brought up in this series. This
I
isn't the first
understand that.
mention.
However, you would think it would be like, we need this stuff so we can breathe the ocean, so when we run out of land, we can do things in the ocean. No. We're going to take this creature here throughout, has lived in the sea. This is the next evolution. The next evolution is not even fully like we're going to have him on land, but we're going to make this guy, he's going to be our next thing in space.
I actually
That
thought that
sets
he was
the
saying
tone- that sets the tone for all of the poor planning and stupid crap he does. Because that guy is a fucking crackpot. from
so
here
Barton
on out.
says, yeah, he goes, I want to learn to be able to change a creature into another kind of creature for space, and because it'll help us. And then Dr. Morgan goes, no, we'll get to space when we're ready and we can't rush things. Both of these people are talking that this is a gorgeous movie as far as this stuff goes. I have not seen in the wild this much just gobbledygook science talk. It's
Think
it's
about
just
it though, man. He goes from like, hey, so this creature, this guy, like, hey, next thing, Apollo creatures. How about that? Like, if we take these creatures,
It's
shove
a
them in a
shame we never got
capsule.
the Creature Goes to Space sequel. Like they could have
Yeah.
pioneered. They could have pioneered monsters in space.
He can fight Jason X.
Yeah.
yeah.
What, the whole thing is very Island of Dr. Moreau, and like I don't understand why nobody. The one thing I never get anytime I watch this movie is like, at least in the previous two movies, the scientists they're like, well, we should study this thing as is. I don't understand why. If you are a scientist and you just like, hey, there's a humanoid intelligent creature that can breathe underwater and is amphibious, why you would go and look at it and go, well, that's rubbish. Let's make it be able to walk around on land. You know, like, which, by the way, he can already do.
Not just upsell him on land. They're skipping that. We're gonna take this creature way off into space, buddy. Like, don't think small.
Well,
don't
they
think
do
small
need to,
on land.
Need to have him walk on land for a few minutes before they take him to space. So that's what they're doing.
Dr.
Don't
Barton
start cheating
has
yourself. This thing's going to space all the way, baby. Straight to the.
Maybe they were just planning for future sequels. Like before, decades before Leprechaun in space, we almost got the creature from the black hole.
I would love.
I guess.
Oh, creature from the black hole. That's marvelous. Let's make that one too. There's our next. He's already got a cool jumpsuit to go into space by the end of it. Ta-da.
Okay, what's really key in what you're talking about is that he has this idea of like changing creatures from one kind into another, and and that's before they even have this sort of wonderful opportunity because the creature is grievously wounded by the fire, and then here's the funny thing is all that experimental stuff that he was talking about, he doesn't do any of that. The creature gets wounded in that fire that you guys were talking about, and all they do is remove the scales that he is already sloughing off, because they were fire damaged, and they discover he has human-like skin underneath, and he has lungs, and they inflate his lungs because his lungs need inflating. But other than that, they don't do anything. This is all the creature, which is why I kind of feel like, other than that they have a need to put him in pants, I kind of feel like this is just a thing that the creature does. I mean, I have a feeling this could happen to him over and over.
The other scientist actually does say at one point, like, oh, maybe the gills will grow back. And I think that
that's right.
They didn't know how much money this was going to make. They were probably keeping their options open.
Yeah.
But the funny thing is about that, in Universal Monsters fan communities, the idea that I see kicked around a lot about that. And Jason, I know you'll get a kick out of this, even though you don't really like the movie I'm about to bring up. But
Okay.
when you go from this movie, the next time the creature from the Black Lagoon appears in anything, albeit unofficially, is in Monsters.
Okay.
And there is some superficial differences because, copyright, fine. And the rationale that I've seen kicked around is the reason why the creature in that movie looks slightly different from the original flavor creature is when he regenerated, he looks a little different. His face changed a little bit. So there's some fan wankery connecting these movies to that movie.
All right. I completely agree that he could regenerate. I have zero problem with that at all because that's no more like absurd wacko science than anything else going on here.
Well, in a movie series rife with asshole scientists, I think we can all agree these are probably the worst, though.
Yes. Well, Dr. Morgan seems all right, although he's a little dismissive of Jed Grant. When like Jed, I thought it was interesting that Jed's a jerk, except for he's not a jerk to that like Mexican Tonto guy they go talk to, who is just this guy who's like, I come look for fish to sell in city. I'm like, what, who in God's name talks like that? Honestly. But he's nice to him. And Jed, so Jed's nice to people he's not trying to seduce. And then Dr. Morgan, he says to Dr. Morgan, hey, I made the pants for the creature. And Morgan looks at them and goes, okay, I'm going to bed. He doesn't even say good job. He doesn't say anything. I mean, that's a hell of a suit that he made for the creature.
What'd be funny is if you found out that the guy never talked that way until after he'd been attacked by the creature. Like before that, he's like, "Excuse me, fair wife, I would like to go hunt alligators. I shall return in the morrow. Please prepare a sumptuous feast, for I have company." And then the monster attacks him. I go alligator, searching, cripple.
I like that version better. It seems somehow simultaneously less offensive.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Well, it's plenty offensive as it actually was written, but I just think it would be amazing if we find out,
it's pretty offensive. I can't believe it. That's just amazing to me.
That's what a creature attack will do to you. Just
I guess
knock you down a peg.
This guy's name is Paul Fierro, and he was born in Los Angeles and died in Walnut Creek, which is closer to San Francisco. So,
Well,
Paul must.
They are paying for his compensation, which is actually kind of cool of the doctor.
No,
I guess it's hard to get workers' comp when you're an alligator hunter and there's no real coverage for creature attack at that point.
I mean, it must be really tough to go home and your girlfriend goes, so what did you do today? And it's like, I talked like Tonto. I don't know why I keep having to do this stuff.
Meanwhile, Tonto's like, yeah, dude, I totally understand.
Yeah, exactly.
Why?
Jay Silverheels is like, listen,
people, why is this the thing? We all have taken the same acting class. I saw you there last week.
Yeah.
Oh, but look at you. You're a doctor. Me, not doctor.
Me,
not smart enough to be doctor. Not arrange equipment correctly or read instruments. Fuck you, doctor.
I saw Jay Silverheels a couple weeks ago in Key Largo. In fact, and he played one of the Florida Keys Native Americans, as it were. Anyway, so yes, the creature is damaged. They put him in pants. And so they thrilled with themselves and with the creature under sedation and locked into a room with this cheesy little lock that you'd have on some shed out back.
Inside, I didn't understand that. He left it on the inside, so it seems like the creature, instead of taking the whole doorknob off, could have just unlocked it.
Well, I mean, who knows if that's something you can do, but the
my point is, why bother locking it at all? It's locked on the inside. So just leave it.
Hey, look, they're doctors, not engineers, okay? It's
Damn it, Jim. Damn it, Jim, I'm a doctor, not an engineer.
You make arrange equipment, but arranging a lock is a totally different thing, Julia. You should know this.
Right. My expectations are way too high.
So they they decide to go have a dinner party, and they're all kind of like drinking and carousing the way that doctors do. And Dr. Barton is obsessed with his wife. He's obsessed with how she acts and conducts herself around other people. He's afraid that she's throwing herself at other people. She's not. I think it's fair to say that she doesn't, to the extent that she flirts with people the way that Hollywood people flirted. There's nothing inappropriate that she's doing. What she is having to deal with is the attentions of Jed Grant, who is getting more and more obnoxious. And anyway, what ends up happening is the party's over. Dr. Barton says, kiss me, I'm your husband. She's like, oh, fine. But it's no good. And so he kind of pushes her away and says, I'm sick of this whole thing. And he storms out. And Jed thinks, well, that's a good time to come in and attempt rape. And so he wanders in and he goes, and he's like macking on her. And she's like, no, no, no. And then the creature arrives to put us all out of our misery. And like he saves her and smacks Jed out of the way
I'll
and
adjust your
Well,
dives into the
genetics.
water.
What if I adjust them so you're a eunuch? How's that for walking on land?
Now this is
Well,
like the
then
best scene in the whole movie. Oh, go ahead, Drew.
then he dives into the water and starts to drown, which is really sad.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
I mean,
Tell
Oh,
us
that's
about
super
this.
sad.
Tell us about this scene because
Humans are
it's really
terrible.
interesting.
well, he after knocking out Rapey McRapes a lot, he jumps off the side of the ship and it starts to swim. This is, by the way, the only actual new footage of Rico Browning in a creature suit in this whole film. And it's, of course, the land creature design. He's swimming pretty good, but he starts to try and breathe, and of course he can't breathe underwater anymore. Good guy scientist jumps in after him with an air tank, and actually uses an air tank on the creature and helps him back up onto the boat. So we have this one scientist actually effectively rescuing the monster, which I don't know that I can think of another monster movie that may have a sequence quite like this. Like it's usually there's such energy spent trying to kill the monster. This actually the monster great effort is used to keep the monster alive.
Yeah, it's really interesting. I agree with you. I can't think of a single instance like this. It's really innovative in the middle of this film that I don't think has much innovation to offer. This is a remarkable scene, and I'd love to see something else like this in another movie.
Well,
Yeah,
it just shows that
Morgan
he's not.
helps the creature back up.
Yeah, when it shows the creature's not, he's not an animal. He's much more like a human because then Dr. Barton frames him for murder, and he looks like genuinely quite hurt about the whole thing, and then he's like, yeah, that's not going to work out for me very well. So he busts out of the cage and chases him down, and then he finally does actually commit murder and throws the guy over. But it felt like it was a very human interaction. None of it felt remotely primitive.
Well, the question, the question is kicked around so much in this movie. Is the creature, the way he is because he's never been treated with kindness? And I would have liked to have seen more discussion of that. I know, like a lot of that might have been probably too heavy for a 1950s monster movie, but it really is a question that deserves to be asked. After we've gone through two of these movies, and most of this movie of the creature just being basically abused, and he is at least somewhat. I mean, he's more intelligent than a dog. We'll grant you that. He's got at least ape level of intelligence. Like he's probably about as smart as a chimpanzee. Like he can figure
I agree
stuff
with you
out.
on that. Yeah. He can figure things out. He can watch relationships and judge like who's to be trusted and who's not. Although that's also true of dogs, honestly. So
let's be fair. Has he really been given much outside of Dr. Morgan? Has he really been given much any reason to trust really anybody?
Yeah.
He's
Yeah.
been really put upon by the world, and this is like
Yeah.
it really breaks my heart to see what befalls him in this movie. Like I love the creature in the first two movies. Anytime we see him in the water, because he's so graceful, and then when we
Uh-huh.
Tony's not wrong to say that he seems like a character that Tor Johnson would like to play, but that to me just is part of the pathos of the whole thing, because when what especially watching them all back to back, and I've known know what we're going from to this where we end up, which is this clumsy, awkward thing walking around in a poorly made suit.
Well, luckily though, uh, there's not much left. I mean, this movie wraps up pretty quickly because once Morgan rescues the creature in again what I believe is a really innovative scene, this one you just talked about, where he goes down and they share an air hose on the way up. This is a remarkable scene. Anyway, they then take the creature to a research facility in San Francisco for reasons never explained in the movie. Uh, why it's San Francisco. They take him there and they stick him in a big metal cage for again, they don't have look, I think it's just this is the set they have. I think they don't have an inside set cell thing. So, that they build this whole scenario around him being outside of this big house where the scientists are going to stay while they figure out the research that they're going to do. This is all very vague. It doesn't matter. You can buy it's just movie logic. The scientists are all going to stay in a big house with Jed Grant, the guide, still staying in a room there. Who knows what for? And the creature is in a metal cage outside with a bunch of sheep. And that very quickly gets us to the end because they're watching him to see if he'll be gentle or if he'll be mean. And what happens is several things happen. Wife goes swimming, there's the cat thing, and then there's the murder thing. So first, and it all just tumbles really quickly in like good old fashioned melodrama fashion. Marcia, who is still feeling unappreciated and lonely, says, I'm going to go for a moonlight swim. And she heads out to the water and Dr. Barton has already indicated recently that he doesn't trust her and he thinks that maybe Jed or somebody is making time with his wife. She goes swimming and Jed comes out and is like, "Oh, I see you're swimming, Mrs. Barton. I will swim with you also." And she's like she's like, "No, no. Find your own swimming hole." And he's like, "No, that's not my style." And so he goes swimming after her. This is all so cheesy. We're intended to be really troubled by him because we've already seen that he's like inclined to attempt to sexually assault her at like any opportunity. And it's astonishing, by the way, that they've still got him around. I am amazed that nobody said, "All right, well, seems like your part of this whole job is over." But anyway, they have he's
So
swimming after her.
maybe they need
They're just
more monster pants made. That's why they're keeping him on the
I
payroll.
guess they're gonna need him to do some more ill-defined manual labor, and they uh, anyway. So the creature, meanwhile, did watch her go in the water, and he seemed very interested in that because of he would love to get in the water, honestly, as anything else. And then a big cat, like a mountain lion, comes and jumps into the cage to get after one of the sheep, or some of the sheep. The creature is real mad at that because he likes the gentle sheep, and so he he com- he completely slaughters the cat by like picking it up and just throwing it against the ground, which I thought was remarkable.
I don't quite buy that the creature has this bond with the sheep. I know that's what they're trying to do, but like we're talking
Yeah.
about, and
I
we're
didn't
talking
get that.
about,
I didn't get that he was defending the sheep. I think that the cat jumped into his cage and he was defending himself.
well, he's in the
Cat's
cage
like,
with the sheep.
sardines.
What?
What's that, Tony?
The cat's like, sardines.
Yes. No, I think he's defending the sheep. I really do. I think when he attacks the sheep, the creature is just appalled. He looks like
That's what I'm saying.
genuinely appalled.
It's certainly how they're trying to play it.
Yeah.
That's certainly how they're trying to play it. I mean, that's the way the shots are set up. But
Yeah.
everything we've previously seen from him is that this is a predatory animal. I don't know that I quite buy that he would have this much sympathy for this.
Yeah.
Maybe again though, maybe it's because he shared the air the scuba tank, and now he's at peace with the world. I don't know. Like again, it's this whole issue of domestication. Like they really have. By making him into a land animal, we talked about this last week. Like this whole idea that we're taming the other, we're making it conform. We even brought up conversion therapy, which is a horrible thing they used to do to gay people. I know that was probably not intended. Like at least not on the surface, but I can't help but think about all that, and it,
I
I
think
don't
it's
know.
pretty well intended. I mean, Dr. Morgan really seems to warn against trying to change things from their nature.
I think that's there, and I think it's at least was intended by the screenwriter, because the parallels are there between the Gilman and the wife character. Like that stuff is that's deliberate. They're making a correlation between an oppressed woman in this oppressive 1950s society and this creature that they're. I mean, like I said, there's literally a lap dissolve, where they lap dissolve from one into the other. Like there's no doubt in my mind. But like, were they thinking about any other minorities? I don't know. I'd like to think so. That would be cool. But
Yeah, I don't know. It's a really good question.
if it was still Jack Arnold, I would say yes. But I, this is the screenwriter is one of the screenwriters of the original Creature movie. But a lot of the stuff that is good here, I think, comes from him. But the director, I mean, who knows? Who knows? There's not a whole lot of ink spilled on the guy that made this movie. I tried to find it while getting ready for the podcast. There's not much out there.
Yeah. I do like this whole scene where he just seems appalled that this cat is attacking these sheep, and so he takes care of the cat real quick. That causes everybody to come running, which causes Dr. Barton to see Jed Grant and Marcia, who are both dripping wet because they've been swimming. So now he's pissed. He has what he thinks is proof. He goes up and kicks Barton out, and because he kicks Grant out, and because Grant is inclined to say a bunch of taunting things like, your problem isn't me, it's that your wife throws herself around and everybody blah blah blah. Jed Grant winds up dead. It's as simple as that. And the creature witnesses it. This is where we were getting into the most bizarre melodrama. It's such a weird. It's yet another Tony. It's yet another weird ass sentence to say. The creature witnesses this murder, and so the murderer figures, well, I need to frame the creature for murder, and so he drags the dead man into the creature's pen that he shares with a bunch of sheep, and the creature goes nuts and just goes on rampage.
Well, how flimsy was this fence? Because he easily tears out of it. Like, did they really think that they were going to be able to hold him?
Yeah, I guess.
Not engineers at all. Like a cyclone fence, what could possibly power through that? Well, evidently a mountain lion, a forceful goat. Had the goats actually cared to be at all forceful, they probably could have done it. Maybe like a turtle that comes by. Basically, no one thought this through because I guess they just figured he shuffles around so much. Like he's like a grandpa now.
Yeah.
As long as no one angers him, like, beating people up in front of him or threatening the girl, as long as he's just grandpa shuffling around, I guess he's fine in this like fence. Oh no, wait, we've done all of that. Now
Oh man. Yeah, so yes, the creature goes on a rampage. He wrecks the scientist's house that they're all living in together, again for reasons that are completely lost to me. And then he
for like cookies or
No, I still don't know why all the scientists are living in the same house. None of this makes any sense at all. But
Well,
yeah, the creature.
so when it's so they can train to go to space with the creature.
I,
Because as soon as they get that capsule ready, it's like space creature time. Because just
it's
making
like they're on that lady wrestling show where they have to be around one another
Glow.
a lot to be accustomed to glow. Yes, very good. Thank you. Uh,
gorgeous creatures wrestling.
gorgeous
I don't know. I
creatures.
think they're just temporary. I could totally buy that they're temporarily living there, and so they just got the house. Just like how the congressmen are all roommates. It's really weird, but they all
Yeah,
have
that's true.
they all have roommates up in D.C. because they're just
Ooh, maybe this was a reality show before there was a lot of reality TV. It's like
Yeah, that's
there
true.
you go.
Let's
it's
find
like a
out what
scientist
happens
and
when people move in with a creature from the Black Lagoon and stop being polite.
Can these scientists live together? Also, there's a creature outside in a very ineffective fence. Will he break out? And the producers all look at you knowingly, like creature's totally gonna break out in episode 4. They'll have to deal with it.
Real world creature edition.
Yeah.
Real world Black Lagoon.
Yes, indeed. Real Black Lagoon. Yeah. So, and by the way, that's the end. The creature just wanders into the water. I
Well, no,
guarantee.
they don't even. Okay. Here's a thing.
No, he murders somebody.
Okay.
Well, you said that already. Yeah.
He kills.
Oh,
He kills evil
Yeah.
scientist number 1 and
Barton.
escapes.
Yeah.
They show him looking longing. Like it's been long enough that I misremembered the ending of this movie because I remember him actually them showing him going into the water and frowning. But they don't actually show that. It's just inferred. Like they have him looking at the waves longingly, and then the movie ends. They leave it open-ended, maybe because they wanted to make sequels, or maybe it's because they were wanting people to draw their own conclusions, so like Jason can have his happy ending and I can have my sad ending. But
You can never go back. Never go back. And they play the Boys of Summer over there.
God.
I'm telling you,
it is really interesting that they opted not to actually show him go in. You just know that he probably will because of the previous scene.
Yeah, right. I mean, I for what it's worth, again, I think that his gills are going to start working again. I think it's as simple as that.
They aren't going to work again in time for him to swim. Like he probably drowned, man.
But I think he was stoned because they've been drugging him. Now I'm just making up reasons. But you know,
just want the creature to live. You want the creature to continue to walk among us.
Just for you, Jason, what actually happens is he goes to skate. He becomes a goat herd in the mountains. Herds them all the way from Florida up into the mountains. Comes a mountain creature, mountain gill man, and lives out his life as a solitary goat herd until Frankenstein monster comes. And
dude. He hooked up with he found Julia Adams' address. He looked her up. Things didn't work out with Richard Carlson. He was like, "Hey, baby, I got some beachfront property with some rad sheep. Let's do this."
Hey, man, it's on the San Francisco Bay. This is a nice place, you know. Yeah. Good grief.
Feature films that were lost.
It is so strange. I had no idea how much of a melodrama this movie was going to be. It is so bonkers, and I like it a lot. Let's in fact get our final thoughts on this thing. Whatever order we went in, we started with Drew. So yeah, Drew. If you can think of something we missed, then feel free to talk about it.
There's one thing I wanted to bring up because we talked about it last week, and I continued to dork all over the internet until I found an answer. So last week we were talking about the creature's roar and how Steven Spielberg has kind of kept it in circulation as a sound effect, but I didn't know how the roar itself was created. Well, I found a quote from Bob Burns himself. So as far as monster fandom goes, that's pretty high up on the totem pole. He claims that it was created by combining a pig, a bear, and an ostrich. So I since it's Bob Burns, I'm assuming that's true. You know, that's. It seems plausible. I mean, I don't know enough about sound effects to contradict that. Beyond that, final thoughts. Again, this is the weakest of the three. It's not the one that I revisit the most. It kind of bums me out because I hate to see what happens to the Gill Man. I like the Gill Man a lot, but he seems to be made to suffer. And, in this movie, he suffers probably the most. So for that reason alone, this movie bums me out every time I watch it. But I did enjoy watching the whole trilogy back to back the way we did, and I'm glad we finally got around to doing these movies. So I had a good time, if nothing else, and I actually enjoyed the disagreements in this discussion. I think this is probably the best podcast we've done on the series because we did fight a little bit, and that makes things more entertaining.
Love it.
Does that mean we get to hole up as scientists and a creature outside?
Yes, we can go get a scientist house. I think that sounds fabulous.
Creature optional. Well, no. I think it isn't optional. I think we always have to have a creature outside with a flimsy fence.
I'll dress up like the Gill Man and live in the...
You have to be a doctor of some sort.
I don't want to be a doctor. I want to be a Gill Man when I grow up.
Well, that's not
you
how
could
these
be
things...
Jed. You could be Jed, the helpful guy. I don't even know.
Would you rather be a Gill Man in the flimsy cage or a Gill Man in the shallow pool with the ladder?
I'd rather be the Gill Man who never got captured by asshole scientists and is still chilling out in the Amazon and fighting alligators and being awesome.
It's a fair request.
Sadly, not available in this reality TV land.
Man, I guess the shallow pool. I guess.
I didn't
Although
make
the
up the
camouflage
rules.
Not that appealing.
Sorry, I didn't make up the rules to reality TV. I'm just merely reporting that Scientist House needs scientists and a Gill Man and a woman.
A scholar
and a woman. Well, last movie, the woman was one of the scientists.
In the previous two movies, the woman was the scientist. It's the first non-lady brainiac we've had.
Yeah.
Yep.
She does get to shoot at sharks, though. I like to picture her shooting just random things and calling them sharks. Really, possums? No, sharks. We're on land.
She's like, it was going after those porpoises, and they're like, then why did you shoot the porpoises? They're sharks.
No.
All of these are land animals that we're talking about at this point.
There's no way of knowing since they don't show us that water. She's just sort of blam, blam, blam with who gave this woman a gun?
Here's one thing I can guarantee: had this not played out the way it was, eventually she would accidentally shoot the husband while he was swimming, claiming a shark was there.
Come on,
a shark was getting at my husband.
This is the 1950s. They give out the guns when you get the cigarette.
That's right.
She's playing a long con here, or at least for another 2 years until it's a good time. And then, he was swimming, and I was shark shooting, as you've seen me do multiple times. It's on record. And a shark attacked him, and I shot his head off. The blood is from where the shark bit him later. Seriously.
Yeah.
And she inherits all the wealth. But no one could. That was the initial plan. No one could have thought that they'd actually find a Gill Man, and all that would change.
It would disrupt her life. Yeah.
Yeah.
But it winds up, by the way, we forgot to mention that when she goes away, Dr. Morgan's headed out wherever it is that the winds will take him, and he goes, she goes, I hope I get to see you again, and he goes, I hope so too, and so maybe there will be love.
Sure.
Wink,
wink. Between these two. Wink, wink.
Of course there was going to be love, and that was always going to be the case because he's the hero of the movie and other people are jerks. So that brings me to my thoughts, which is that all of the things that had to do with the human beings and the relationships, to me, were overly predictable and shallow. But I will say that it does continue the theme of humans are really horrible to non-humans and other humans as well, and that it does effectively here as well. Because I think that's absolutely right what you were saying, Drew, about that it's so sad how they treat the creature. I mean, yes, we've had our disagreement about at what point an animal or non-human has it coming, but I definitely don't think in this film he had any of this coming. It's like clearly he just is being tortured. And
I think he would have been okay just staying in the Everglades, eating anacondas or whatever he was doing. So,
So that part, I think, I guess there is a little bit, I hate to even give it this much credit, but I guess there's a little bit of depth to the story in regards to the treatment of the non-human, but otherwise, no, 1 star.
Alrighty. Tony, did you have any more thoughts on this?
No, I mean, other than I don't think they really issue shark shooting badges in both either the girl or Boy Scouts, which is a shame. No, it's an okay movie. It has my least favorite version of the creature. I think the suit that's at the end is kind of ugly and shambly. I don't know. I wish there was more revenge. Although now that he's human, it does go back to my idea for him becoming a banking mogul and getting financial revenge on all of them. Sadly, I don't think that happens either way. I think he probably does drown and just end it. I've been through enough. I've been burned. I've been
Yep.
shot at. I've been poisoned. I've been oceanariumed. Just finally, I'm just gonna crawl into the sea, and that's gonna be it. But
Yep.
humans are terrible. The real creature is that beady-eyed dude, the husband with his weird gimlet eyes, and I'm okay with not revisiting this film after this again.
Handle me with care, said the traveling Wilburys. I agree with you. The husband is the worst part of the whole thing. And I do kind of like the fact that all of the men who have major problems here, except Dr. Morgan, who has no problems. But, both of the men who are pretty awful, the husband and Jed Grant, both also have moments of being just fine, like when they're working with one another. But they're ultimately pretty awful people. Yeah, I because I have hypnotized myself into imagining that there's a happy ending to this movie like 90 seconds after the end of the film. I'm fine with it. So, yeah, so I liked it a lot. I liked it also because, again, it's a pretty sleazy melodrama, and that appealed to me.
By the way, I
Yeah.
will also accept a world where the creature becomes in commercials and he's like the 70s, like Native American commercial where the tear comes out his eye, except it's like litter, a littered beach, and they zoom in on the creature, like do a close up, and he's got a single tear. That I could see him doing as well.
It'd be nice if Mexican Tonto was walking with him and was like,
Oh yeah.
"Look, look, trash on ground."
And then the
Oh my
creature goes,
God.
and he looks sad, and he like holds his head down, and then he looks up at the sky as if to think, "Why, dear Lord, am I walking the earth, shambling the earth, and these humans pollute in the tear?"
Yep.
And they hug it out
Well,
and
I think
pet the
that's a
goat.
profound vision, Tony. All right, let's get our endorsements for the week. I think we have talked about anything you can possibly talk about. The creature who walks among us. Well, actually, I do have one more question. Why is this the end? I mean, there were like 5 or so Frankenstein movies. I really want to know, like, how come Universal didn't give us like 2 more Creature from the Black Lagoon films? I
You
mean,
saw
Drew, do you know?
Well,
one.
first of all, the first two were propelled by the 3D fad. This movie was not made in 3D because the bottom had kind of dropped out of that. So,
Yeah.
there was that. Uh, Obviously, they're keeping this open-ended enough to warrant a sequel, but this one just didn't make as much as the other two, so the audience was
Yeah.
not as hungry for it, I think. But these were expensive. Even this one, compared to the other science fiction movies that they did, these were relatively expensive movies because they involved a lot of underwater stuff. So there was just the mounting cost of that. So
Yeah.
I think if they had done another one, unfortunately, it would have been 100% creature on land. Because just to slash the cost back even more, and would anybody really want to watch that? So I'm happy with this as a trilogy. There's very few horror / science fiction trilogies that are just that. And I mean, this movie, warts and all, it does kind of have you if you watch all 3 movies together, you do kind of have a beginning, a middle, and an end that feels natural. But I mean, yeah, you could keep going. There's been novels that have supposedly continued the story. There's stuff like Monster Squad, which are homages. There's comic books. There's the creature is a pop culture icon. I mean, even though there is just the 3 movies, the image of the creature from the Black Lagoon, you would think that there was 10 Creature from the Black Lagoon movies, because there's so much merchandising done. He's up there with Frankenstein and Dracula in popularity, even though there is just the 3 movies. So that's really a testament of, for one, a cool creature design, but two, because there is a lot of psychology that you can talk about with these movies, which we've done now for 3 weeks.
Yeah.
So, Creature from the Black Lagoon is a great character. It's actually astounding to me that they've never been able to mount a remake, but, that it might end up being awful, so maybe we should be grateful that they have it.
I mean, like we talked about last time, they thought they were doing one in the early 2000s because they wouldn't allow the character to be in the game we were working on. Like, there's been plans for well over a decade, so...
Well, Joe Dante was attached to it at one point. John Landis, John Carpenter. There's been a lot of attempts to do it. I think you could do a good remake of this. I mean, there's enough within the source material where you could do some interesting stuff. Universal doesn't seem to really know what to do with the monsters, and I think Creature from the Black Lagoon would probably be, unfortunately, no different. Until you get somebody that has a really clear vision for it, I think it's better just to leave well enough alone.
That's well said.
Personally, attest that they don't know what the hell to do.
Right.
And then also, what's funny is Del Toro is going to give us a better creature movie than they probably would make.
Thank you.
Absolutely.
Next 2 months.
Yes. That's absolutely right. Del Toro's movie, that is absolutely correct. What's it called? The Shape of Water? Isn't that right?
Yeah.
Oh. Yeah, you're right. That's the creature. That's a new Creature from the Black Lagoon movie that just doesn't have that license. By the way, there was a book that I wish I had my hands on, but it's just impossible to get. So Universal published an adaptation of the Creature from the Black Lagoon novel. There was one in the 50s that came out in the UK, and I'm sure that's adequate. But there was one in the 70s that was published in the United States. And it has a cover that says Creature from the Black Lagoon. It has an introduction by Ramsey Campbell. It has photographs in the middle that are all from Creature from the Black Lagoon. And it has a novel that updates the story to the 1970s and has a completely different creature and features like super gore like there is not in the original movie. And I have no explanation at all for how that must have happened. That where I kind of picture in my head that the publisher got the book like 3 weeks before they go to print and was like, "What is this? This is completely different from what we talked about," and then they had to publish it anyway because they didn't have time for another. That's my only explanation, but apparently it's really something else. I've never read it. I've only read about it. Okay, so thank you very much. All right, let's get endorsements. Drew, thank you for the lecture on Wither the Creature. What else do you have for us this week?
Well, a million miles away from that, I have been diving in once more to The Flash on Netflix, because they just put on the 3rd season, or as I like to call it, Stop Helping Barry Allen, because every time Barry Allen seems to help, he just seems to make it worse. But I get it. I really do get a kick out of this series because it's this weird combination of like a Silver Age DC comic book combined with Buffy the Vampire Slayer style melodrama, and I just love it. This season introduces Wally West, Kid Flash, and and actually the Wally West was the Flash that I have had more experience with, because when I was growing up, that's who the Flash was, and Barry Allen, who had died in Crisis on Infinite Earths, was mostly referenced in flashbacks. So it's interesting to see this dynamic on TV. They do a fair job of it. I don't know. I really, really, really like the show. It's increasingly my favorite live action superhero product. I like the fact that the heroes are are actually just like very straightforward, almost straight-laced heroes in a way that, you know, we don't often see in live action. You know, there's not a lot of, you know, there's angst, but there's not a lot of like mealing around and like, oh, it's such a bummer and a burden to have superpowers. You know, there's none of that. There's Barry and Wally are generally pretty happy to have superpowers, and it's something I just, like I said, I just get a kick out of the show. Is it perfect? No, but it's a really fun show. And I'm sure most of the people who listen to this podcast have probably already watched it because I know it's a big hit, but that's what I've been into lately.
I'm with you. That show's it's hella fun, man. I enjoy it, warts and all, but I really dig it.
It's super fun.
I've only watched a few scenes of it, but we have at least one daughter who won't stop talking about it. So
I feel really bad for the guy that's playing Barry Allen in the Justice League movie because he seems to be trying to do a good job, but like when I see that guy, I'm just like, you're not the Flash. Screw you. Like,
That's
I don't
hilarious.
even like his, like I don't even like his suit as much as the suit on the show. Like it's
yeah. Although I have to say, I am totally looking forward to, God, I'm going to say this knowing that people are going to attack me. I'm totally looking forward to the Justice League movie. I'm down with it. I'm ready for the Justice League. That sounds like a blast. But before we talk about anything I'm interested in, Julia, do you have any endorsements for us?
I don't think so because I was traveling all week, so I didn't really watch anything or read much that was fiction. So I don't really have anything at the moment. If I think of something, I'll add in later.
Wonderful. Tony, what are your thoughts?
I really dug Atomic Blonde, which is set in at the time of the Berlin Wall falling, as a backdrop to all the spy and action things. I've seen people talk about, oh, it's thin on plot, etc., but it's got all the spy stuff and twists you would want from spy things. You know, I don't need every movie to take the character on a voyage of discovery through this. I thought it was really great. It's got a lot of great 80s music in it. The soundtrack is its own kind of character in a lot of ways. I really dug the movie. I highly recommend it. It's nostalgic if you are familiar with all the parts in the era, but it doesn't, in my opinion, hit you over the head with all of that. And it's pretty brutal. So not for everybody, but I really enjoyed it, and I will endorse Atomic Blonde because it did all the things I was expecting it to do, and that was fantastic.
Cool. Very cool. All right. My own endorsement, the only thing that I'll mention is the Creature from the Black Lagoon Fuck This video that we passed around, and it's so funny. Somebody just took instances of the creature just whacking things. You know, he'll go like, fuck this lamp, and it's just great. It's a really good job, and it was sort of delightful and profane. So you'll have to be careful who you show it to. You know,
I like that we have no problem saying all the things. I'm like, whoa, watch when you're watching it.
Well, I'm just saying, if any of our listeners are young, don't let your mom see that you're watching this thing. So
there you go again with the inappropriate endorsements. No, it's about not being safe for work. It's not about we're trying to corrupt our young listeners to keep things from their parents. I do not support that.
Julia's wrong, everybody. Just so you know. And I were totally encouraged. So just don't tell your parents.
If there are young people listening to this podcast and have watched a lot of these movies with us, they've already seen some depraved things. So I don't think the Creature from the Black Lagoon dropping F-bombs is going to traumatize them.
Again, I know this is a dangerous opening, but I like the, hey, kidnap everybody and chain them to the bottom of the sea. But F-bombs, little bit extreme. Just watch that. Hey, chain up your friends, everybody.
That's how I roll.
But you know what would be even worse is if you chained them up and made them watch the creature saying, fuck you, fuck this. Yeah. Made them watch the YouTube clip, because that's going to turn into some like fucking, Clockwork Orange stuff right there. Like they're going to be freaking out.
It could lead to an army of creature wearing people, anarchists, marching through the streets, destroying things, yelling, throwing
cursing it.
F-bombs out there, and which maybe, maybe that's what America needs. I'm not judging one way or the other.
Let's make America creature again.
That's truly,
I'm down with this. This is the vision.
That's a wonderful world. Okay. All right.
Yo, man, 2020.
Oh, man.
We've got to figure out, guys, and we haven't discussed it at all. We don't have to discuss it right now, but our summer retrospective is not over. We've got to figure out. Well, we did 3 creature movies, but now we've got to do some summer stuff, and I don't know what's next. So it'll be fun. Last summer we did things like The Ghost in the Invisible Bikini, but we never did the horror of Party Beach. We haven't suffered through Humanoids from the Deep, and I think there are a lot of opportunities here. We haven't watched Piranha.
I wish there was
Piranha.
there was a Chud Beach. That would be amazing.
Which one?
Sadly, there's not, but I bet we could find something similar.
Similar to what? I missed it.
Chud Beach movie.
Oh.
I wish there was.
I mean,
it's not, but I wish there was one.
Blood Beach was pretty close. Actually, to be honest with you, Humanoids from the Deep is very much like a Chud Beach movie.
Yeah, I know.
Okay, well,
it's
wait,
pretty
definitely. I'm not loving how where this is going. So let's let's
Okay.
take this offline and talk about it
All
later.
right. But all right. Thank you guys for being on. For those of you who are listening, be sure and join us on the Facebook page and let us know what you think and challenge us, and we will totally engage with you. We are so close to reaching that 1,000. So I encourage you to sneak into your friends' houses and
Nope.
from their homes
Nope. Just
and force them to listen to the show by piping the show into the trunk where you place them, and then they will
Have
like
you learned nothing from watching
No.
these movies? Don't you know tormenting other living beings will only lead to more torment, Jason?
yes,
But
My God.
kindness
you
is
give
what
them
we're after.
hints.
You
But if
sound like an
kindness.
Al Adamson script now. That's amazing. All right. Yes. Thank you very much, everybody, and have a fantastic week. And we will see you next week with more of the summer 2017 retrospective. I don't even know what we're going to watch, so I guess we're going to have to discuss that. Bye, everybody.
Nice.
Night.
Night.